The sleek silver hull of the Zephyrian courier ship gleamed under the artificial lights of the USN Retribution's docking bay, its smooth curves a stark contrast to the human dreadnought's angular armor plating. The Justice Department's sigil, a scale balanced over a swirling galaxy, pulsed ominously on its flank as it locked into place with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Admiral Elias Carter didn't bother to look up from his tactical display when the alert chimed. His scarred fingers traced the trajectories of the Fifth Fleet's patrol routes near the Orion Rift, the old wound across his knuckles pulling tight with emotion. "Magistrates here early," Lieutenant Mara Vasquez remarked from the comms station, her cybernetic eye whirring as it zoomed in on the docking feed. "They must really want those warrants served." Carter grunted. "Let them wait." The bridge crew exchanged glances but said nothing. They knew better than to rush the Admiral when he was assessing threats. The Retribution's captain, a broad-shouldered veteran named Halsey, leaned against the navigation console. "Could be a diplomatic incident if we leave a justice envoy cooling his heels, sir." "Diplomatic incidents," Carter said, finally looking up with eyes like flint, "are what happens when someone survives the conversation." He tapped a command into the console, and the main view screen split, half showing the docking bay, half displaying the encrypted data packet the courier had transmitted upon arrival. The header alone made his jaw tighten. "Cosmic Justice Department official warrant for judicial disarmament species. Designation: Humanity." The docking bay doors slid open. Magistrate Krell Vosk strode onto the Retribution's bridge, like he owned it, his chitinous plates polished to a mirror shine, 4 glowing eyes scanning the human crew with barely concealed disdain. 2 armored Zephyrian enforcers flanked him, their pulse rifles humming at half charge. "Admiral Carter," Krell, Vosk said, his voice a grating buzz of mandibles and vocal sac vibrations. "By order of the Galactic Council and the Cosmic Justice Department, you are hereby served with—" "I can read," Carter interrupted, nodding at the warrant still glowing on the screen. "Excessive force, unlawful orbital bombardment, crimes against sentience." He leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking. "You forgot improper use of sarcasm. That one's my favorite." Krell, Vosk's bio. Luminescent veins pulsed an irritated violet. "This is not a joking matter. The Council has ruled that humanity's military actions during the Orion Wars constitute systemic violations of interstellar law. Your fleets are to be surrendered immediately for judicial disarmament." A beat of silence. Then Vasquez snorted. The magistrate's head swiveled toward her. "You find this amusing, Lieutenant?" "I find it creative," she said, tapping her fingers against her thigh. "Last I checked, glassing a planet after it launched bioweapons at civilian colonies was called self-defense." Krell, Vosk's mandibles flexed. "The Zephyrian colonies were—" "Not the topic of today's discussion," Carter cut in. He stood, and the sheer mass of him, the way his shadow fell across the magistrate, made the enforcers tense. "You want our ships, fine, but warrants go both ways." He nodded to Vasquez. She grinned and tapped a command. The warrant on the screen flickered, replaced by a counter-document. Thicker, denser, scrolling with data. Krell, Vosk's eyes darted across it. "What is this?" "An itemized list," Carter said. "Zephyrian war crimes, starting with the bombardment of New Athens, ending with the slave pits on Krellis Prime." He took a step forward. "We've got receipts." The magistrate's plating rattled. This is irrelevant. The Council has already—" "The Council," Carter said softly, "is about to learn why humanity doesn't do judicial disarmament." He turned to Halsey. "Captain, escort our guests back to their ship." Krell. Vosk drew himself up. "You are making a grave mistake, Admiral." Carter didn't smile. "No, I'm giving you a head start." As the magistrate and his enforcers were led away, Vasquez exhaled. "They really think we're just going to hand over the fleet?" Carter watched the courier ship detach on the view screen, its engines flaring as it sped away. "They think we're animals. Brutes who win wars by throwing bodies at problems until they go away." He tapped the console, pulling up the real fleet deployment. Not the derelicts the Zephyrians would find, but the cloaked carriers, the railgun platforms hidden in asteroid shadows. Time to teach them the difference between excessive force and calculated interest. The bridge crew exchanged grim smiles outside. The stars burned cold and distant, waiting. The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the murmurs of 100 species, their alien voices blending into a dissonant chorus. The air smelled of ozone and the faint metallic tang of translation implants working overtime. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez adjusted the neural interface behind her ear, the cybernetic enhancement feeding her real-time analysis of every whisper, every subtle shift in posture among the assembled delegates. Ambassador Drill of the Vorak Dominion floated at the center of the amphitheater, his tentacles weaving through the air with practiced grace. A holographic projection flickered to life above him, displaying grainy footage of human warships bombarding a planet's surface. The images were carefully edited, flames engulfing cities, civilians fleeing in terror, the unmistakable silhouette of US vessels looming in orbit. Exhibit A, Drill announced, his voice dripping with smug satisfaction. Humanity's so-called precision strikes. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of outrage. A Thalassian delegate slammed its finned appendages against the table, bioluminescent patterns flashing across its skin in agitation. "This is genocide," it screeched. Vasquez didn't react. She stood beside Admiral Carter, her fingers tapping a silent rhythm against her thigh. A coded message to the rest of the human delegation. Stay calm. Play along. Drill cycled through more footage. This time, it showed human ground forces retreating under heavy fire, their armored forms scrambling for cover. "And here we see their cowardice," he sneered. "They claim to be warriors, yet they flee when faced with true opposition." A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. The Zephyrian contingent clicked their mandibles in amusement, their chitinous plates shifting with mirth. Even the usually stoic Cerebrians pulsed with disdain, their gelatinous forms quivering. Vasquez leaned toward Carter, her voice barely above a whisper. "They edited out the part where we won." The Admiral didn't turn his head, but the corner of his mouth twitched. Of course they did. Drill wasn't finished. With a dramatic flourish, he summoned another hologram, a list of charges glowing in the universal script of the Cosmic Justice Department. Excessive force, unlawful orbital bombardment, crimes against sentience. He paused, letting the weight of the accusations settle over the assembly. Humanity stands condemned by its own actions. The chamber erupted again. This time, the noise was deafening. Shouts, clicks, hisses, the telepathic hum of the Cerebrians, broadcasting their disapproval directly into the minds of nearby delegates. Vasquez waited. She counted the seconds, letting the tension build. Then, when the uproar reached its peak, she activated her own holoprojector. The room fell silent. Her display was crisp, unedited. It showed the full battle logs, human ships intercepting a Vorak slaver fleet before it could reach a populated world. The precision strikes weren't indiscriminate. They targeted weapons arrays, engine cores, command hubs. Every blast was calculated to disable, not destroy. Then came the ground footage. The retreat Drill had mocked. A feint. Human forces had lured the Vorak into a kill zone, then turned and annihilated them. "You forgot to show the next part," Vasquez said, her voice calm. "Where we wiped out your entire battalion in 6 minutes. Drill's tentacles stiffened. This is propaganda." Vasquez didn't blink. "It's raw battlefield data time, stamped, verified by 3 independent IS. She tilted her head. "Unless you're accusing the entire Galactic Data Integrity Network of conspiring with us." A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the chamber. The Thalassian delegate hesitated, its bioluminescence flickering in confusion. Drill recovered quickly. "Even if your strikes were precise, the scale of your retaliation was disproportionate. You glassed entire worlds." Vasquez tapped another command. The hologram shifted, zooming in on a single planet, Vorak Fey. The surface wasn't glassed. It was intact. Cities stood. Forests thrived. We hit one military base, she said, buried deep in a wasteland, 0 civilian casualties. She smiled, cold and sharp. You're welcome to send inspectors. Oh wait, you already did, and they lied. The chamber went deathly quiet. Drill's tentacles writhed. This proves nothing. Humanity is still sick of your hypocrisy. Vasquez interrupted. She turned to the assembled delegates. The Vorak have been raiding neutral systems for decades, enslaving entire species, but were the monsters because we stopped them? No one answered. Admiral Carter finally spoke, his voice a graveled rumble. The Cosmic Justice Department issued warrants based on fabricated evidence. He let that sink in. I wonder what else they've lied about. The silence stretched. Then, from the back of the chamber, a single Sarabian pulsed, a quiet, hesitant signal of doubt. Vasquez didn't gloat. She just shut off the hologram and folded her arms. The floor's yours, Ambassador. Explain why we should surrender our fleets to a court that can't even fact-check. Drill's tentacles trembled. For the first time, he had no answer. The bridge of the USN Retribution was silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Admiral Elias Carter stood with his arms crossed, staring at the holographic warrant still floating above the tactical display. The words, "Judicial Disarmament," glowed ominously in the dim light. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez leaned against the console beside him, her cybernetic eye flickering as she scanned the document for the 10th time. You'd think they'd at least try to make it sound less like a surrender demand, she muttered, tapping a finger against the screen. Voluntary compliance, my ass. Carter didn't answer immediately. His gaze was fixed on the star map behind the warrant, where the Zephyrian fleet was already moving into position. Their sleek silver ships gleamed like knives in the dark. They're not even hiding it, he finally said, voice low. They want our ships, our weapons. They think they can just take them. Vasquez smirked. And if we say no, Carter's lips twitched, then we're in violation of interstellar law. Convenient, isn't it? A soft chime echoed through the bridge as the comms officer turned in his seat. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command, priority encryption. Carter didn't move. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of General Alden, his scarred features illuminated by the blue light of Earth's orbital command center. His voice was calm, measured, the kind of tone that made junior officers straighten their spines. Admiral Carter, the Council's decision has been reviewed. You are to comply with the Cosmic Justice Department's demands. For a moment, no one on the bridge breathed. Vasquez's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. Sir, Carter held up a hand, silencing her. His eyes never left the screen. Understood, General. We'll begin preparations immediately. Alden gave a single nod. Good, Earth Command out. The screen went dark. The silence that followed was thicker than the vacuum outside the ship. Then slowly the bridge crew turned to look at Carter. He exhaled, long and slow, before tapping a command into the console. A new set of coordinates appeared on the star map, deep in the asteroid belt, where the USN Vengeance lay hidden. Lieutenant, he said, voice quiet but carrying across the bridge. Open a secure channel to Captain Blake. Tell him it's time. Vasquez didn't hesitate. Her fingers flew across the controls, locking onto the Vengeance's encrypted frequency. The connection hissed to life, and Blake's voice crackled through, grinning even through the static. About damn time, Admiral. We've been getting bored out here. Carter's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Consider your boredom officially over. Captain moved to Phase 2. Blake's laugh was sharp, with pleasure. The channel cut out. Vasquez turned back to Carter, her cybernetic eye glowing faintly. So, we're complying? Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up a new file on the display, a list of coordinates, timestamps, and ship signatures. The evidence had been compiling for months, buried in classified databases where the Galactic Council wouldn't think to look. He selected the final entry and hit transmit. A heartbeat later, The Retribution's comms officer stiffened. Admiral, we're receiving an incoming message from the Zeperian flagship. It's Magistrate Krell Vosk. Carter didn't look surprised. Put him through. The screen flickered again, and Krell, Vosk's chitinous face appeared. His four eyes narrowed in what might have been irritation. Admiral Carter, I trust you've reviewed the warrant. Carter leaned back in his chair. I have, Krell. Vosk's mandibles clicked. Then you understand the consequences of non-compliance. The Cosmic Justice Department does not issue idle threats. No, Carter agreed. Neither do I. He tapped a final command. The screen split, half showing Krell, Vosk half displaying the file Carter had just sent. A list of Zeperian war crimes meticulously documented, with attached footage of their fleet's glassing colonies, executing prisoners, violating every treaty they'd ever signed. Krell, Vosk went very still. Carter's voice was calm. Consider this a counter-warrant, Magistrate. You want to talk about excessive force. Let's talk about yours first. For a long moment, Krell, Vosk didn't speak. Then, slowly, his mandibles twitched. This changes nothing. The Council has already ruled. Carter smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression, then I guess. Well, see how much that ruling is worth. He cut the transmission. The bridge was silent again. Vasquez let out a slow breath. Well, that's one way to respond. Carter didn't look away from the star map, where the Zeperian fleet was still inching closer. They wanted a surrender, he said quietly. They're about to learn what happens when humanity fights back. Somewhere in the asteroid belt, the USN Vengeance powered up its engines. The trap was set. Now, they just had to wait. The Zeperian armada emerged from warp in perfect formation, their obsidian, hulled warships gliding toward the derelict human fleet with predatory grace. Fleet Commander Vex flexed his chitinous claws on the command throne, all four eyes locked on the tactical display. The human ships hung lifeless in the void, their running lights dark, their engines cold, just as the Cosmic Justice Department had demanded. Pathetic, Vex hissed through his mandibles. They surrender without even a symbolic resistance. His tactical officer, a younger Zeperian with bioluminescent streaks of nervous yellow pulsing across his carapace, hesitated. Commander, our scans show no life signs aboard any human vessel, but their weapon systems appear intact. Vex waved a dismissive claw. Standard human incompetence. They probably forgot to power down their railgun capacitors before abandoning ship. A ripple of clicking laughter spread through the bridge crew. Move in the confiscation teams. I want their flagship towed to Zeperian High Command by solar cycle's end. Aboard the USN Wrath, hidden among the tumbling asteroids of the belt, Captain Ryan Blake watched the Zeperian boarding shuttles approach the derelicts through his targeting scope. His fingers danced across the stealth systems console, maintaining the gunship's perfect emissions blackout. The Wrath wasn't just cloaked, it was invisible, a ghost wrapped in next-gen metamaterials that bent light and radar around its hull. All stations, stand by, Blake murmured into his throat mic. Across the system, 47 other human ships did the same, their crews holding their breath on the bridge of the Retribution. Admiral Carter observed the trap unfolding with grim satisfaction. Lieutenant Vasquez leaned over his shoulder, her cybernetic eye whirring as it zoomed in on the lead Zeperian battleship. They're taking the bait like kids at a candy store, she said. Carter didn't smile. Remember the rules of engagement. Disable, don't destroy. We're here to make a point, not corpses. Out in the black, the first Zeperian boarding party clamped onto the derelict human cruiser USN Justice. The assault team leader, a battle-scarred veteran named Crix, signaled his warriors forward with a flick of his antennae. Their plasma cutters flared to life, slicing through the airlock door. The moment the door collapsed inward, Crix's entire world became fire. Not from weapons, from screens. Every monitor aboard the Justice blazed to life simultaneously, flooding the corridors with blinding white light. A deafening siren wailed as a recorded human voice boomed through the PA in perfect Zephyrian click speak, warning warhead-armed detonation in T-10 seconds. Crix's warriors scrambled backward in panic, their exoskeletons clattering against the bulkheads. The countdown hit 0, and the ship's emergency lights flickered on harmlessly. A new message appeared. Psych, just checking if you can read. Across the derelict fleet, identical scenes played out. Human holograms materialized on every bridge, mocking the boarding parties with exaggerated surrender poses. One particularly creative display showed a human admiral eating popcorn while watching the Zephyrians flail about. Fleet Commander Vex's carapace darkened with rage. "Find them," he shrieked. "Scan every cubic meter of this sector." That is when the asteroid started moving at first. The Zephyrian sensor officers assumed it was debris disturbed by their own engines. Then the rocks changed course, accelerating toward the Armada with impossible precision. The largest asteroid, designated as Fey by human charts, shed its rocky exterior like a snake shedding skin, revealing the sleek, angular hull of the USN Vengeance. Captain Blake's voice erupted across every Zephyrian comm channel, his grin audible even through the distortion. "You wanted war crimes. Let me introduce you to calculated interest." The Wrath fired first, not with missiles or railguns, with electromagnetic pulse warheads tuned to Zephyrian shield harmonics. The blue-white detonations rippled through the enemy formation, overloading their systems in cascading failures. Lights died across 100 warships. Engines sputtered. Weapons went dark. Vex's flagship lurched violently as something massive locked onto its hull. The view screen flickered, then displayed an external feed. The Retribution, its kilometer-long railgun barrel, glowing cherry red from a near point-blank warning shot. Admiral Carter's face appeared on every Zephyrian screen, his scarred visage calm as a frozen lake. "Fleet Commander Vex, you have 10 seconds to order your ships to stand down." He checked his chronometer. 9-8. Vex's mandibles worked soundlessly. His tactical display showed the full scope of the ambush now. Human vessels emerging from behind moons, from gas giant atmospheres, even from the corona of the system's star. All weapons locked onto his helpless fleet. 7-6. The Zephyrian commander's claws trembled over the surrender controls. His second in command, a grizzled veteran of 3 galactic wars, made a small choking noise. They let us think we'd won. 5-4. Vex slammed his claw down on the comms panel. "All Zephyrian vessels, cease hostilities and power down weapons." The channel crackled with Carter's voice one last time. "Smartest thing you've said all day." On the Wrath, Blake watched the Zephyrian ships go dark one by one. His weapons officer, a fresh-faced ensign from Mars, let out a low whistle. "Damn, sir. They folded faster than a house of cards in a hurricane." Blake leaned back in his chair, tapping the ship's hull affectionately. "That is the thing about bullies, kid. They're real brave until someone stands up." He nodded toward the tactical display where Carter's flagship now loomed over the Zephyrian command vessel. "And humanity. We brought a whole damn ladder." The bridge of the Retribution hummed with restrained energy. Admiral Elias Carter stood motionless at the tactical display, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. The holographic feed showed the Zephyrian flagship, the Judicator's Will, hanging in space like an overconfident predator. Its chitin-plated hull gleamed under the light of a distant star, its weapon ports open and glowing with charged energy. Krell, Vosk's 4 eyes flickered with luminescent agitation on the view screen. "Admiral Carter," the magistrate hissed, his mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of smug satisfaction. "Your defiance has been noted. Surrender your vessels immediately, or face the full wrath of the Cosmic Justice Department." Carter didn't blink. "You came here to confiscate my ships, magistrate, but you forgot to ask one question." A pause. The bridge crew held their breath. Krell, Vosk's antennae twitched. And what question would that be? Carter turned slowly, his gaze locking onto the view screen. Whether we'd let you. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez's fingers danced across her console. A single keystroke sent the command. Deep within the Retribution, the railgun systems whined to life. Magnetic coils charged, their hum vibrating through the deck plates. Gunnery Chief O'Reilly cracked his knuckles. About damn time. On the judicators, alarms blared. Zephyrian officers scrambled as their sensors screamed warnings, energy spikes, targeting locks. Systems they hadn't even detected until now. Admiral, Krell. Vosk's voice lost its composure, the luminescence in his eyes flaring bright with panic. This is an act of war. Carter leaned forward, his voice a low growl. No, Magistrate, this is a demonstration. The Retribution fired. A tungsten round, no larger than a man's forearm, streaked across the void. It punched through the Zephyrian flagship's forward shields like they were made of wet paper. The impact wasn't explosive. It didn't need to be. Kinetic energy did the rest. The round tore through 3 decks before embedding itself in the ship's primary reactor housing. Silence. Then chaos. The judicators shuddered as emergency containment fields flared to life. Klaxons wailed. Krell, Vosk stumbled, his exoskeleton clattering against the deck as his ship listed to one side. On the Retribution, Vasquez smirked. Shields at Faye, theirs, not so much. Carter didn't smile. He didn't need to. The message was clear. The comm crackled. Captain Ryan Blake's voice cut through the static, his tone dripping with dark amusement. Admiral, the Wrath is in position. Their flanking fleet just realized their engines are locked. Should I? Hold, Carter said. His eyes never left Krell. Vosk, let them sweat first. The Zephyrian magistrate struggled to his feet, his chitin streaked with iridescent fluid, their version of sweat. You dare, Carter interrupted him. You charged humanity with excessive force, Magistrate, but you didn't bother to check the context. He nodded to Vasquez. The lieutenant tapped another command. The view screens split, showing the uncut footage from the battles the Zephyrians had called war crimes. Human ships retreating, not in fear, but to draw enemy fleets into kill zones. Orbital bombardments targeting only military installations, avoiding cities. Every act of so-called brutality revealed as precision. Krell, Vosk's mandibles went slack. You edited the footage, Carter said. We didn't. A new voice cut in, Vorak Ambassador Drill, patched through from the Galactic Council chamber, his tentacles writhed on screen, his voice trembling. This changes nothing. The Warrants stand. Vasquez snorted. Yeah, then explain this. She threw another file onto the feed, classified Zephyrian transmissions. Orders to provoke human colonies. False flag attacks blamed on humanity. The real war crimes. The bridge of the judicators went deathly quiet. Carter straightened. You wanted justice, Magistrate. Here it is. Outside, the rest of the human fleet decloaked. Not the derelicts the Zephyrians had come to confiscate. Real warships, guns, hot, shields flaring. The Vengeance, the Wrath, a dozen others, all waiting. Krell, Vosk's voice was barely a whisper. You planned this. Carter finally smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Payback's a bitch. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Species of every shape and size shouted over each other, their voices blending into a cacophony of outrage and confusion. The massive holographic display at the center of the amphitheater showed the live feed from the battle. Human warships, sleek and deadly, cutting through the Zephyrian armada like a knife through flesh. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez stood at the human delegation's podium, her cybernetic eye flickering as she monitored the feed. The footage the Vorak had shown earlier, the edited clips of human war crimes, now played side by side with the real, uncut logs from Earth Command's archives. Ambassador Drill's tentacles twitched, his usually smug expression replaced by something far more satisfying: fear. "This is impossible," he sputtered, his voice barely audible over the din. "You altered these records." Vasquez smirked. "No, you did." She tapped a command into her wrist console. The hologram shifted, zooming in on a single moment from the Battle of Cygnus V. The one the Vorak had claimed showed humans glassing a civilian colony. The footage expanded, revealing the truth. The colony was a disguised Zephyrian military outpost, its shields flickering as it prepared to launch a planet-killer missile at a nearby human refugee convoy. A hush fell over the chamber. "You called it excessive force," Vasquez said, her voice cutting through the silence. "We called it precision." The footage continued, showing the aftermath: human medics treating wounded Zephyrian soldiers, engineers repairing the damage to non-combatant structures, the very opposite of the indiscriminate slaughter the Council had been led to believe. Thoraxis, the insectoid representative from the hive worlds, raised a trembling limb. Then the other incidents. Vasquez nodded. "All of them. Every war crime you accused us of was a surgical strike. We didn't bomb cities. We took out shield generators. We didn't massacre fleets. We disabled engines and offered surrender. But you never saw that part, did you?" Drill's face darkened. "You let us believe you were monsters." Vasquez leaned forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "No, you wanted to believe it because the alternative, that humanity fights with more restraint than your so-called civilized species, terrifies you," the chamber erupted again. But this time, the tone had shifted. Delegates turned on the Vorak and the Zephyrians, their accusations now directed at the true architects of the deception. High Magistrate Zelthar, the ancient reptilian overseer of the Council, slammed his tail against the floor. "Enough." The room fell silent. His golden eyes locked onto Vasquez. "If what you say is true, then the warrants were issued under false pretenses." Vasquez didn't blink. They were. Zelthar's nostrils flared. "And the battle happening now, the one where your Admiral Carter is dismantling the Zephyrian fleet? That," Vasquez said, "is what happens when you try to disarm a species that chose not to glass your worlds the first time." A murmur ran through the chamber. The hologram flickered again, showing the Retribution's railgun tearing through the Zephyrian flagship's shields like they weren't even there. The shot was clean. No secondary explosions, no unnecessary destruction, just a single devastating strike to the engines, leaving the ship dead in the void. Drill's tentacles curled in on themselves. "You could have done this at any time." Vasquez crossed her arms. "We don't start fights, Ambassador, we finish them." Zelthar exhaled sharply. "Then, what do you want?" Vasquez smiled. "The same thing we've always wanted, the truth, and maybe an apology." The chamber was silent. Then, one by one, the delegates began to stand. First the Hive Worlds, then the Cerulean Accord. Even the normally neutral TVEC consortium rose, their translucent skins pulsing with reluctant respect. Drill looked around, his confidence crumbling. "You can't be serious." Zelthar cut him off. "The Council recognizes the evidence presented by the human delegation. The warrants are hereby suspended pending full investigation." Vasquez didn't react. Shed expected as much. But then Zelthar did something unexpected. He bowed, not deeply, not grandly, but enough. "And on behalf of the Galactic Council, we owe humanity a debt." Vasquez allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. The galaxy had just learned a hard lesson. Humanity didn't commit war crimes. They defined them. The bridge of the USN Retribution hummed with quiet efficiency. Every station manned by crew members who moved with the precision of veterans who had seen too much war to celebrate victory too soon. Admiral Elias Carter stood at the center, his scarred hands clasped behind his back as he watched the holographic feed from the Galactic Council chamber. The once arrogant faces of the assembled species were now slack with shock, their earlier confidence shattered like the remnants of the Zephyrian fleet drifting in space behind them. Lieutenant Mara Vasquez leaned against the tactical console, her cybernetic eye flickering as she monitored the Council's emergency communications. "They're scrambling," she said, her voice dry with amusement. "Half of them are trying to blame the Zephyrians for provoking us. The other half are drafting apologies." Carter didn't smile. He didn't need to. The silence on the bridge was louder than any cheer. On the main screen, the Vorak ambassador Drill's image flickered into view, his tentacles twitching in uncharacteristic agitation. "Admiral Carter," he began, his voice strained. "The Galactic Council wishes to discuss a cessation of hostilities." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Discuss." He let the word hang in the air, heavy with implication. Drill's frills flushed a sickly shade of purple. "To negotiate," he corrected hastily. Vasquez snorted. "Funny, you didn't want to negotiate when you were slapping warrants on us for war crimes." Carter held up a hand, and she fell silent. He tapped a command into his console, and a new transmission overrode the Council's feed. A single document, crisp and official. Emblazoned with the seal of Earth Command, the Galactic Council's collective breath seemed to hitch as they read the title, Invoice for Judicial Overreach and Unlawful Declaration of War. The itemized list scrolled past in merciless detail. Drill's tentacles coiled tight around his podium. This is outrageous." Carter leaned forward, his voice a blade wrapped in velvet. "No, outrageous was your council, declaring U.S. criminals for defending ourselves. Outrageous was the Zephyrians thinking they could demand our surrender." He tapped the invoice again. This is just accounting." Silence, the kind that came before a storm. Then, from the back of the council chamber, a single voice, a Cerilion scholar, their floating orbs wide with dawning realization. "You let us believe you were monsters." Vasquez crossed her arms. "We let you underestimate us. Big difference." Carter didn't wait for their reply. He activated the Retribution's thrusters, the massive dreadnought turning gracefully toward the edge of the system. The Council's protests crackled over the comms, but he ignored them. "Sir," Vasquez asked. "They're begging for terms." Carter didn't look back. "Tell them they have 48 hours to transfer the funds. After that," he finally smiled, "we start charging interest." The last line of the invoice flashed on every screen in the galaxy, bold and unignorable, "Fey payable in full, or we renegotiate." Fey the vote to rescind the warrants passed within the hour. Unanimous humanity didn't commit war crimes. They defined them,